Appendix. I urge members to support Ms. Starry Lee's motion. Thank you.
The second debate session comes to an end. The Council now proceeds to the third debate session. Members who wish to speak in this session, please press the Request to Speak button. The themes of this session are earnestly address people's concerns and difficulties in daily life, work together to safeguard harmony and stability. The policy areas covered in this session have been set out in the script for members' reference. Dr. Chow Mein Kwong. Mr. President, the key address delivered by President Xi on July 1st is that the people aspires to lead a better life and live in a bigger flat. The government should show commitment and resolve to tackle challenges so that the fruit of success can be shared fairly to more members of the public, so that people can believe that as long as they work hard, they can improve the livelihood of themselves and their families. Promoting social mobility is how we respond to President Xi's request. This government has adopted a strategy to enhance housing production's efficiency, quality, quantity, and only by increasing public housing production can we shorten the waiting time for public housing applicants and to lift subdivided unit tenants out of their plight. The 10-year production plan provides that 30,000 housing units will be built, up by 50%. That is 158,000 units in the coming 10 years, so that the composite waiting time for public rental housing will be shortened to 4 years. For light public housing, I believe this is a good initiative. However, in face of over $100 billion of deficit, we should pull our purse strings. Now, we need to think about this. If we are to improve the living conditions for subdivided units, must we only go by increasing public housing production? If we want to help the sandwich class and also young people to move up the ladder, for those who are not eligible for public housing, are there ways to help them? Together with G19 members from diverse professional backgrounds, we looked into the issue. And we believe we should revitalize the HOS secondary market. There is an ample supply of HOS flats in the secondary market. Why is it that young buyers are deterred from buying them? Because of lack of mobility, HOS owners are unable to sell their flats and change to the private sector. Public housing tenants likewise cannot move up the ladder, not to mention any hope for the subdivided unit tenants. Every year, a lot of money is forked out from the public coffers to build new public housing. Now, in this year's policy address, the Chief Executive and the Secretary for Housing have accepted the G19's proposal, and I'm grateful. The guarantee period for mortgage loans will be increased from 30 to 50 years. This can address the problem of a short mortgage period, but more importantly, it can help promote turnover of HOS in the secondary markets. As of the end of September 2022, there were 217,000 GSH or HOS flats. It is expected that the new measure will help release 200,000 flats. That means 4,500 white farmers and other green farmers will benefit from the scheme. This is an effective measure. We will immediately see an increase in the turnover of HOS. As white farmers and green farmers participate in the schemes, the public housing queues can be shortened. Applicants will be able to get a flat sooner. We can save $13 to $19.5 billion of public money, in other words. public housing production in the future can help people move up the housing ladder. The government, meanwhile, can focus energy on building subsidized flats for sale. So indeed, the lengthening the mortgage period for HOS to 50, mortgage guarantee period to 50 years is a good deed. I thank the government for heeding my view. If possible, the period should be further lengthened. We can help share the cost of mortgage payments by prospective owners, especially for the sandwich class and young people. They, at the moment, don't see hope in moving up the ladder. I think the government should make an all-out effort and enhance publicity so that the public will better get in grips with the original intent of this policy, so that they could make an informed choice on buying properties. I want to clarify and dispel the misconception prevailing in the community. The guarantee period is not the same as a mortgage period. Some netizens, however, are trying to smear the government by saying that it will take 3 generations to complete the mortgage for an HOS flat. The original intention is to have a guarantee period of 50 years, and that you can take up to 90% of the property value out as a mortgage. This can help improve mobility upwards. So for the existing HOS policy, if we want to maximize the benefits under this policy, the government should consider. At this moment, there is only a quota of 4,500 white farmers eligible. You should provide more quotas. Out of the 117,000 applications, 59,000 of them are applicants below the age of 35. They are young singletons. Only half of these transactions took place. That is fewer than 200 buyers. This is because of the guarantee period restriction. This is also due to the limited quotas, especially for singletons. So Mr. Chan Kin-po and myself and other members already urged the government to increase the number of places under the scheme from 4,500 to 20,000. Through this relaxation measure, we can further expand the scope for more prospective buyers who can afford this HOS flat to join this market. According to my estimate, for this mortgage guarantee period, 50 years minus the age of the building, comes with shortcomings. There are those who still won't be able to benefit from it. 1 year down the road, the government can review the effectiveness. If need be, you can extend the guarantee period to 60 years. G19 members and myself earlier analyzed the data and statistics kept by the Hong Kong MC. We want to dispel the rumor that this will. And in fact, this will help lift the burden off the government's shoulders in creating land or identifying land for public housing production. This is a good deed. I thank the government for making this bold move to address this housing issue and improve people's livelihood. I so submit.
Ms. Yun Song, President, I'll be talking about family. The pro-childbearing proposal, and the NPP made the proposal about the newborn bonus, and in this policy address that this has been adopted, and I'm grateful to the government for taking on board our proposals. In particular, I'm concerned about the population policy and childbirth, and I have put questions and at the question time and also the CE's question time in this regard. The NPP is of the view that we have to encourage childbirth. We simply cannot count on the $20,000. This will provide a temporary relief only, and I think the government has to face up to the phenomenon of women getting married late. And in terms of the assistive childbirth, the government should be given $50,000 in subsidy. The government has not accepted this proposal, but under the salaries tax, there is a deduction of $100,000 for assisted childbirth, and I think the government should relax the restriction, like the cold storage of the eggs should be lengthened so that there would be a longer period, a longer, more flexibility. We're not encouraging women to have babies later, but we are offering women more flexibility, and I hope that the government will consider this in the next policy address. The second one is the support for foreign domestic helper and child care. In the budget, the child allowance has increased from $120,000 to $130,000, and this is worth supporting. The $10,000 additional allowance is not anywhere near enough. I think there should be a progressive allowance. The more babies you have, the more allowance there should be. There should be a progressive increase of $20,000 for the second child, and for the third child there should be double the allowance. This is the NPP's recommendation. I hope that the budget would take this on board. As to childcare, I'm glad that the government has improved the neighborhood childcare center, in particular the bonus for the home-based carers, so that the women will have more time to get on with their work. Other than newborns, the existing families should also be supported. In 2020, the divorce rate is actually 58%, a new high in history. The government should really step up the mediation service along the line of the Singaporean model. The government should set up the family mediation service and minimize the legal disputes. I'm also glad to see a pivot away from the positive non-intervention policy, and the government is proactively encouraging childbirth, and I hope that the government will address all the imbalances and address all the problems associated with childbirth to engender a sense of well-being and fulfillment. Ms. Jovi Chen, President. To address the livelihood issues, housing is an important issue, and I'll be focusing my attention on housing. Like Director Xia said, we have to rid Hong Kong of subdivided units. We have to define the poor quality subdivided units. Children living in SDUs suffer a lot mentally and psychologically. In Tsuen Wan and Kwai Ching, we can look at this photo. This is the Secretary for Housing. We visited this household. There are 3 children who are cooped up in these tiny little subdivided units. They're doing their homework in bed, and this is a common phenomenon. I'm glad that the FTU's recommendation has been taken on board. One of the KPIs is for the DFS to set up a task force on SDU within 10 months. They will be giving a definition for poor quality SDUs and take measures to phase out these dreadful SDU, and there should also be a priority scheme for allocation of rental housing. Now, we feel that this current team of the government is really capable and competent, and seek to get results for what they do. We have to also bear in mind those who are living in rental housing. There are many rental housing blocks that are so dreadful that they cannot catch up with the modern day standard. And there are many rental housing blocks that should be redeveloped, like Le Mokshi estate. There is no specific timetable, and people cannot really plan for their life. I also see that in many of the old and dilapidated housing blocks, they are using the tap that people used in the 1980s, and the renovations cost us $1.5 billion. If you ask the residents, they are not terribly happy with the result. My PT1 team visited one of the housing estates. Now, the flat is suffering from water leakage during rainfall, and some of them don't even have the aluminum window. They have to use the wind screen. In Chongqing estate, there is a staircase. I'm grateful to the Oriental Daily for documenting this. I'm tiny in stature, but I cannot put my whole feet on the steps. President, you're much taller in stature. You cannot really put your foot on the step. And the housing department told me that this is in line with the standard. I've put in an oral question, raising question about the standard. So we have to ramp up the volume, the quality, the efficiency in the provision of housing. We have to engender a sense of well-being. Otherwise, however hard you try, people simply will not be happy about it. So I speak. Ms. Doreen Kong, President, in Hong Kong, we don't have any top-level macro policy. I think a top-level policy should cover public housing, SDUs, private housing, and urban renewal. All these are really logically linked. A scientific urban renewal would improve the society and address the SDU issues, and will also enhance the value of the private housing. A good, efficient urban renewal requires more collection of data and also rejuvenate the district. The government must understand that light public housing should not be part of the policy. We have 107,000 SDU households, and there are 230,000 people on the waiting list. The light public housing, we only provide 30,000 units upon completion, and there are still 200,000 people who are on the waiting list who are waiting in agony. The chief executive said that enough land has been gathered for public housing, and this is to instill public confidence. People are really full of hope for the future. For new land supply, the government has measures to release the land, but these are distant prospects that doesn't offer much of an immediate solution. And this is really a thorny issue that has to be tackled. Now, $25 billion will be released for urban renewal, but there is no mention of the sources of the funding. How is it going to be used? Urban renewal would involve the resettlement of the residents, the preservation of the character of a district, and this is very much a burden on the government. In To Kwa Wan, for the 13 streets and also the 2 districts in Sam Shui Po, these have been dragging on for years. Another day of delay would mean a further aggravation of the problem. The government has not put this on the agenda. I mean, there is no top-level policy in this regard. And in these old urban areas, we have seen the 3-0 buildings. We also have the inadequate housing, and the rental housing is getting old, and there is no timetable for renewal. The welfare policy is problematic. It's not really something charitable. we are not trying to turn a dynamic society into a society full of idle people. I think we have to learn from the welfare state in this regard. And according to public policy, welfare has different aspects. The financial stringency will give rise to crisis. The government should really rethink this policy. The interminable dishing out of money will not be the answer of the problem. And I do have doubt about this. I think the government should have regard to the fundamental problems that are facing by the grassroots people. The government should have the top level policy. Otherwise, we will be going down the path of irreversible path of a welfare jurisdiction. The government should protect the welfare of the people, while at the same time encourage people to stand up on their own feet.
Over the past few weeks, the Singaporean government has launched a series of measures to encourage grassroots citizens to work. We should learn from them. The Hong Kong SAR government has the obligation to provide basic job opportunities for its people to encourage a positive mood in the city. This is very important to improving people's livelihood. For the grassroots, employment means a lot. It is not just about living and developing. It is how grassroots people can achieve prosperity and integrate into society. On women's development, we have a high divorce rate. Women are facing a lot of pressure in the workplace. And maintenance fee has been a long-standing problem for divorced women. The government has not realized the unleashed potential in the female population in Hong Kong. In the past, our policies were only scratching the surface. In this policy address, we have the pilot scheme on maintenance fee recovery. However, there is no mention of education for children as well as other supports for divorced women. It shows the government's short-sightedness. There is also insufficient mention of support measures for people with disabilities. The commission or committee for support of persons with disabilities, which have been floated for a long time, has not been established. We don't have a universal accessibility for many facilities, and the taxi industry has been given the green light to raise the fees. According to the CNSD, in 2020, the PWD's unemployment rate was 11%, almost doubled that of the general population. Only 13.7% of PWDs receive post-secondary education. We only have a voluntary employment pro-PWD's employment policy, but it is not statutory. PWD employees have a hard time finding a job. With better support, we can make sure that PWDs can live a life with dignity and self-autonomy. The government's objective should be enabling persons with disabilities to contribute to the development of society at various positions, rather than relying on security. However, without a favorable environment, the policies will not be realized. We have to stick to the original mission of being pragmatic. We can't ignore the reality of Hong Kong's situation as well as people's aspiration. We have to take a hard look in the mirror. By the same token, the sentiment of the public is a mirror. If the government's policies are good for them, the feedback will be favorable. The government should conduct sufficient investigation and research to formulate policies which will benefit the public. I so submit. Ms. Starry LEE. President, as a council member directly elected in the Kowloon Central District, I am pleased to see the government accepting the Kowloon Central as well as the DAB's suggestions to build a smart green transport system in Kai Tak. The monorail system has been proposed for Kai Tak many years ago. The plan didn't come to fruition, and now we are pleased to see that the green transport system is being proposed again. We thank the Chief Executive and the Secretaries for hearing us. And once again, we see a mention of the green transport system in Kai Tak in the policy address. I've listened to my constituents' views on the policy address. They asked me to thank the Chief Executive and the government for taking on board their views. Now we are going to have the green transport system, which we thought was lost to us already. We hope that the timetable will be very short, very near in the future. I believe that the residents will support tendering the project based on the original design with some flexibility reserved. Besides thanking the government for implementing the green transport system, my constituents are also concerned about the development of Kowloon East and the CBD2. Mr. Bill Tang has put forward some innovative ideas. The residents really have high hopes for the government on building the second central business district. The government shouldn't let us down. People want to see progress. All we hear now is the Northern Metropolis developments and other new development projects. It seems that the CBD2 vision has been put down. However, the government, in your reply to my constituents, pledged that the CBD2 vision has not changed. So please take action and show us that the CBD2 in Kowloon East is still alive. And we are also concerned about the usage of the isolation facilities in the area. My constituents understand that we must find some short-term uses for the isolation facilities. For example, it can be used as a cultural innovation base for the youth. That is a good idea. It is very near the Kai Tak cruise terminal. There is insufficient support for transport support for the cruise terminal. This is an issue we have to deal with. Mr. Kevin Yeung has promised to submit a report on enhancing the supporting facilities for the cruise terminal, as well as the competitiveness and usage of the terminal. Now, the isolation facility is located right next to the cruise terminal. I think it is suitable to use it as a cultural innovation base for youth. Well, as tourism attractions all around the world, there are very creative cultural innovation bases for youth as well. There were rumors that the isolation facility would be converted into a youth hostel. That caused concerns among the constituents because the transport is weak. There is only one bus route serving the isolation facility and the MTR station, not to mention the lack of other ancillary facilities. And the isolation facility is supposed to be a short-term structure. It is not suitable for use of a youth hostel, which is a medium to long-term project. So please reconsider and take on board residents' views to find other short-term uses for the facility. For example, cultural base for the youth, or an athletes village for the national games, or uses in relation to sports development. It can be used for short-term accommodation for athletes. So much about the views of people in Kai Tak. For Wong Tai Sin, residents have very huge demand for healthcare. I have to convey their views despite the absence of Professor of the Secretary for Health here. There is no A&E departments in Wong Tai Sin, and the Kowloon district has an aged population. Now, when the redevelopment project of the hospital in the area did not provide an A&ED in the area, we were disappointed. Waiting time for specialist consultation in Wong Tai Sin and Kowloon in general is on the high side. We can't just rely on the Kai Tak Hospital to meet the healthcare need in Kowloon, because Kai Tak Hospital will replace the Queen Elizabeth Hospital's function. We need an emergency hospital in the area so as to meet the increased healthcare needs together with the aging population. In the next session, I will convey the views again to Professor Low. This is the aspirations of residents in Wong Tai Sin and Kowloon. Now let me move on to the pro-birth policies and the housing policy. I think the pro-birth policy measures are the highlights of this policy address. Because of the declining birth rates and the aging population, we have entered a phase of negative increase in population, with more people dying than people being born. Now, there are measures like the newborn baby bonus of $20,000 and also priority allocation of PRH for families with newborn, as well as tax incentives in relation to accommodation for families with newborn. There is a more comprehensive package of supports for working parents and other subsidies. This shows the government's commitments to provide support and address the issue of declining birth rates. The roots of the issue are twofold. First, housing. Second, education. Now, with the time I have, I have to talk about our housing policy. We have scarce land resource, and in year 2021, the median living space per capita in Hong Kong is just 16 meters square. It is much lower than other places in the world. Now, if you look at Seoul or Singapore, which is of a similar size with us, as well as Taipei, some of their per capita living space is twofold of ours. That's just the average. And also there is the uneven distribution of land. For subdivided unit dwellers, they are 6.6 meters square. For PRH tenants, 13.6 meters square. When deciding whether to give birth or not, one of the young couples' considerations would be whether they can get a bigger home. They will start with a starter home. They will start with a small house with a kid in the family, or even 2 or 3 more children. They would need a bigger house. So housing is a stumbling block. This government's priority is to address housing problem. The government has adopted a multi-pronged approach to increase land supply and enhance quality, quantity, efficiency, and speed to achieve the targets. With your good efforts, towards the second half of the next 10 years, there will be more abundant supply of housing. We can achieve 2 objectives. There is the committee to help Hong Kong get rid of substandard subdivided units. That can be achieved. And second, we can compress the waiting time for PRH allocation to a reasonable level. That's all thanks to your efforts. Concerning the basic housing issue, housing difficulties faced by the grassroots families, the government cannot afford to stop here. The next highlight of focus should be responding to the housing needs of the young people or the marginally middle class. Now, for young people without rich parents, it is very difficult for them. Over the past 10 years, housing prices have risen by more than 300%. That very much outpaced the increase in wages. There is an increase in education and salary level of young people, but that's incomparable with the rise in housing price. Now, for a household earning $50,000, they would have a difficult time paying for the mortgage of a small home of 300 square feet. We all understand it is hard to buy a house in Hong Kong. According to CNSD, there are more and more young people renting a flat. In 2006, there was 16.2%. In 2021, it has risen by a few percentage points, 16.5%. It shows that young people could not afford to buy a home. Now, compared with PRH tenants, young people who cannot afford a house and have to rent a flat are under a big financial pressure. That's why many of the young people have to keep the name on the register to wait for a PRH flat. These are the lost generation. Many of them are university graduates. Some of them could not buy a home because they don't hail from a wealthy family and they can't start a family. We have to address the problem squarely.
Let's look around the globe. The government has the duty to fix the housing crisis wherever you look. But the housing policy should be more than just about the grassroots. Of course, we prioritize the grassroots, but let's not forget about the needs of the marginal middle class and young people. We should not leave that to the free market. The market cannot fix the problem. Hong Kong's housing market has never been a free market because the government has control over land supply. So I urge the government to do this. In the second 5-year period, we will have more supply. Let's think about this. For home ownership scheme flats, let's look at the numbers and think about what the HOS flats can do. It's key to getting on the housing ladder. But there are many problems. Few HOS flat. 2014 HOS scheme was flat, but now there are just 41,000 units. On average, each year there are just 5,000 units or so. Each sale sees massive oversubscription. We now see a lower level of oversubscription, but let's not forget that's still oversubscription. For those aged below 30, the success rate is less than 1% in securing an HOS flat. For those aged over 30, the success rate is just 30%. Few manage to get an HOS flat. So these flats aren't promising for young people. HOS flats are still very costly. Starting from 2018, the price of HOS flat is no longer linked with the market rate. It has been linked with family income instead. But the sale price remains 60 to 70% of the market rate. Roughly 70%. That's still costly. The government should think about this. Businesses and members of the public are asking for the scrapping of all cooling measures in the home market because of the low level of turnover in the home market and the failed land sales. The government has concerns. Young people cannot afford homes. More HOS flats let young people get on the housing ladder, and then we can have a healthier home market. Let's distinguish between properties for investment and those for living in. When we do that, then the government will be more comfortable about dropping the cooling measures. So let's think about this. We need to meet the needs of the marginal middle class and young people in terms of their housing aspirations. And as a next step, bigger homes and the aspirations for home ownership should be put in our housing policy so that we can have a better housing policy as so submit. Dr. Frankie Ngan. President, the new policy address shows the chief executive's commitment, thoughtfulness, and dedication to serving the public. There are 150 key performance indicators. 77 are from last year's PA. There are 73 new indicators. These are specific indicators. This shows the CE is determined to deliver a vibrant economy for a caring community. On manpower, there were many measures about attracting talent, the top talent pass scheme, relaxing the general employment policy and the admission scheme for mainland talent, removing the quota for other admission schemes, expanding the talent list, setting up the Hong Kong Talent Engage office, and then we have the dedicated team for attracting businesses and talent. These measures have paid off. More than 70 people have come to Hong Kong under the TTPS. The target was 35,000 people, so we have exceeded the target by far. Let's also consider keeping talent here. The challenge ahead is to help them lead a good life here so that they stay here and contribute to Hong Kong. Let's look at the 70,000 talent. We need to look at the demographics and come up with tailor-made measures to keep them here. We can start with housing and incentives, housing allowances, for example, or subsidies, bonus, to get top talent to come here and get the people who started businesses with them to come here so that we can boost our competitiveness through industrial transformation. Now, labor market. Our unemployment rate is at 2.9%. The labor population at 3.83 million. At the peak, we have 4 million people. We have lost more than 100,000 people. Labor participation rate at 57.7%. There are jobs waiting for workers. We had 3 years of COVID-19. Major changes have happened in the labor market. Transformation has happened across industries. Some job posts are replaced with technology. Workers need greater skills in using technology. There is also a mismatch in the job market. There's now a need for employee retraining. Employers are complaining about the lack of workers. Imported workers can meet short-term needs. On training and labor shortage, the PA proposes appropriate measures to train more people so that they become workers and boost local labor productivity. The retraining allowance will go up by 40% to $8,000 per month. There will also be an enterprise-based training scheme for pre-employment training and on-the-job allowance. There is also a pilot scheme on re-employment. Under the working family allowance, the household and children's allowance will also go up. The idea is to provide financial incentives to boost labor participation so that more housewives and people of middle age can rejoin the labor force. There's a pilot scheme on re-employment. Those age 40 get a $20,000 allowance. Many people find this scheme attractive. They would like to see the scheme rolled out quickly. Employers have hopes about the enterprise-based training to identify new workers and ease the manpower crunch so that there will be vitality in this sector. Boosting labor participation. We need more carers will be working. That means fewer people looking after children and seniors. The PA also proposes measures to support working families. More child care center places, more child care center parent subsidy, higher incentive pay for community nannies. But these measures don't go far enough. That fails to meet the enormous public need. The government still believes family members should be responsible for their own family duties. The government is unwilling to show a greater commitment in terms of finance. The government needs to ditch this thinking from the old days Otherwise, we can't make progress. I raised this issue at several panel meetings, and that has to do with the civil service. The PA proposes marriage leave, compassionate leave, starting from next year. Family-friendly employment measures matter, but at panel meetings, I asked the Civil Service Bureau about this, whether civil servants with newborns will get parenting leave, flexible hours, and whether these civil servants can get shorter work hours. All these meant to encourage childbearing. But the Bureau told me they had to balance the government's operation with public service. Manpower arrangements mattered, so the government decided against these flexible arrangements or parental leave. At the Chung Kwan O government offices, there's a child care center. We asked whether at the Civil Service College or the CGO there would be child care space. The CSB said they were out of space, and there was no way to have this kind of child care space. The government is the Hong Kong's largest employer with the largest number of buildings. If the government is unwilling to take the lead with family-friendly measures, how can it encourage childbearing? I hope the government can take the lead. Let's start with the civil service. Encourage civil servants to have children. Launch family-friendly workplace measures. The government said, with family-friendly measures, we will see fewer tension. There will be higher attendance levels and higher productivity, and boost morale and lower wastage. I fully agree. I hope the government can take the lead and implement the spirit of this description, take the lead, launch family-friendly employment measures. Now I turn to the policies about foreign domestic helpers. We have an aging population. More people need care. There's growing demand for foreign domestic helpers. The PA this time does not have anything on FDHs, control over agencies, job hopping, or quality. We need to keep following up these issues. We had a case involving Indonesian workers. Employers are asked to pay 5,000 in fees that was supposed to be paid by the worker. The issue has been solved for the time being. But long-term reliance on Indonesia and the Philippines will leave employers at the mercy of the outside factors. The government needs to come up with a rating system for foreign domestic helper agencies. We need an authority on FDH affairs. We need to step up control over agencies. And for those doing job hopping, there should be sanctions. And there needs to be control over early termination and compensation. To protect employers of FDHs from fees, the government should explore new sources of foreign domestic helpers to ensure stable supply. We need competition so that we don't see spikes in their wages. And we can also avoid long-term over-reliance on certain countries. Now I turn to mass transit in East Kowloon. In Kwun Tong, there are more than 700,000 residents. It's the densest area in Hong Kong. More than 300,000 people work in Kwun Tong. As Mr. Bill Tang and Ms. Starry LEE said, Kwun Tong is in CBD too. There's a long-standing transport issue. The PA says that in Kai Tak, Hong Shui Kiu, there will be smart green mass transit system. This is the East Kowloon line that has been 10 years in the making. This shows the current term government is decisive and delivers for the people. We're all concerned about the alignment and the rising costs of the tunnel. The government said from Choi Hong East to Po Tat, The PA this time proposes extending it to Yau Tong East Station, connecting to the Yau Tong NTL station, but that leaves out Lam Tin North Station. Once the news got out, people in the area, people in Yau Tong North cannot benefit. They are let down, especially in Pak Tin Estate, Po Tin Estate, Heng Tin Estate. These housing estates think something's missing in the East Kowloon line. If the tunnel plan goes ahead, I hope the tunnel can be shorter to lower the costs. For people in Lam Tin North, the government should come up with a way for them to get to the Kowloon East line. Say, maybe we can have a Lam Tin North station to connect people living in Pig Run Road so that they can take the Kwai Shan tunnel. This way we will have more riders, and this will be also stronger incentive for developers to get a tender in. There will be a mass transit system there. I hope they can connect to other parts of Kai Tak so that Kai Tak no longer becomes an island within the urban area. In the future, I would like to see a link between the Kai Tak line and the Kowloon East line so that people around Charcoal Link Road will see better transport links. That way, we will see better links for the business areas in Kowloon East too. We need better transport links to fix the transport issue of Kowloon East. CBD2 means we need connectivity. That's what the C there stands for. I hope we can get it right.
Now I'd like to turn to another subject, fertility and child healthcare voucher. Now there are many measures to encourage childbearing, a newborn baby bonus and priorities allocations program for housing for newborn families with newborn babies and so on. But then many have expressed concern about medical costs for children. Now, the DAB conducted a study. It found that in the past year, 20% of the interviewers spent more than $3,000 on their children's health and medical cost. And there's a long wait at public hospital for 6 months for certain services. Now, private healthcare services are expensive. It usually costs over $1,000, and specialist services is even more expensive. Now, children. Healthcare costs are a heavy burden, especially for the grassroots families, so that they have to therefore go for public hospital services, but then the wait is long, and if it's an emergency, then they have to go to the accident emergency system, and overloads the public healthcare system is not satisfactory. TAB proposes something similar to the elderly healthcare voucher. There should be a child healthcare voucher, so $2,000 should be given to each child, and it will help encourage grassroots families to go to private sector for services rather than to public hospitals. And then the Department of Health should also enhance the student health program. Every student should be given examination each year, and there should be mental assessment as well. So there could be early intervention to protect the mental and physical health of children. Now, on the whole, the policy address has put forward many pragmatic measures on various policy areas. So that helps to promote governance and enhance people's livelihood. So in the whole, there's been good response to the PA. I speak in support of the motion. Mr. Louis Long. President, in the past few years, Hong Kong people have experienced many tough challenges, but then we have the backing of our country. When it was the toughest for us, we still received guidance and care from the country. So that's why we're now on the way to recovery, and so we're able to go farther and more steadily. I must thank the Chief Executive and his team for putting in such a great effort to come up with the 2023 policy address. It is a blueprint to extend the beautiful story of Hong Kong. I'm a reader, and from that perspective, I've studied the policy address with great care, and today I'm going to give my views on that. Now, on the housing policy, it covers an important part. Is an important part of the policy address. The chief executive has stated clearly that with governance, it's all about allowing people to live better and work better. And so, public housing, we have seen much progress. The waiting times shortened by 9 months to 5.3 years. And also, there's the first batch of public light housing of the 2,100 units. Work started, and then another 410,000 housing units will be built because the land has been identified for that purpose, and they will meet the needs for the next 10 years. And then the chief executive has also announced a series of measures to enhance public housing. For the mortgage guarantee period for secondary HOS market, there's an extension, and then there's going to be boosting of quantity and quality of public housing, as well as speed and efficiency. And then there will also be speeding up of redevelopment of old public rental housing estates. That's something where everybody's been asking for. Now, so in terms of enhancing the quantity, speed, efficiency and quality of housing, I believe all agree that the PA has given us a satisfactory answer. And for redevelopment of old public rental housing estates, I think on top of the 10, instead of adding one more project to the 10 already proposed, we should go further. We should go by the completion date of PRH estates, and then we can come up with a comprehensive redevelopment program. So in an orderly and gradual manner, we could replace old PRH estates. And then there could also be proper arrangement for the housing of tenants affected in redevelopment. Now, the Northern Metropolis will be the growth engine for Hong Kong in the future. And the Development Bureau has published the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda, and there are 4 major zones. There are specific development goals and also implementation timetable. Now, as to whether Northern Metropolis project will be a success, it depends to a large measure on whether the infrastructure projects could be completed as scheduled. That's why financing is most important. I hope that the Committee on Financing Major Infrastructure Projects led by the Financial Secretary and the Relevant Office will come up with concrete recommendations as soon as possible. To tie in with the Northern Metropolis development, there's an announcement of a new projects of 2 railways and 1 major road. That's the Northern Line extension. The Northern Link Eastern Extension, Northeast New Territories Line, and Northern Metropolis Highway. But then we have to learn from past experience. So, for example, with Kai-Tak, there are hard lessons to learn. And so when people moved into Northern Metropolis, we must make sure that the various traffic and transport infrastructure is in place as scheduled. On the day of delivery of policy address, the chief executive announced easing a number of demand-side measures for the property market. For example, the special stamp duty application period will be reduced from 3 years to 2 years, and then the rates of buyer's stamp duty and new residential stamp duty is reduced by half. And also there's a stamp duty suspension arrangement for incoming talents. I welcome all these measures. Now, before the delivery of the policy address, in the various sectors, the real estate sector, my predecessor, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, and myself have been stressing time and again that the spicy measures are undermining the housing ladder in Hong Kong. It impacts adversely on our economy. Now, in the past, there were so many criticisms, but the government would not listen, and now finally is starting to listen to our views. So I must thank the chief executive for moving with the times, and he's taking decisive measures to ease the spicy measures so we could revitalize the housing ladder. But then more importantly, I hope the government will do something else. Now, there's another point mentioned in the policy address, that is we need to speed up redevelopment. So there's a proposal to relax the compulsory sale threshold. Now, after the spicy measures are in place, real estate developers have to pay 30% of the stamp duty before redevelopment. Now, the spicy measures are eased, but we still have to pay 15% of the stamp duty in advance, and that's become a stumbling block for urban renewal. Because we have a high interest environment, so time is is an enemy for us. And if capital is held up, that means the costs are higher. So at the end, there won't be any urban renewal. So we want to enhance. If we want to enhance we need to enhance the compulsory sale regime to meet the target in the PA. And then there's also announcement of a series of measures to simplify procedures to speed up the whole development process, and I'm all for that. At the question and answer session on the 26th of October, the Chief Executive answered my question in saying that he did not set any specific indicators because he is concerned that there may be conflicts among the indicators of different departments, and then we don't want indicators for each and everything. Then it will mean nothing. But then the sector has only been asking for a single indicator, that is within a specified period, there has to be concrete response given. So that's all we're asking for. And then the cases could move forward. Now, very often there are delays in cases because the department keeps asking applicants for supplementary information. That means before the deadline, the department keeps passing the buck to the applicant. So there's so much back and forth. It's not really a true vetting process. On land valuation, there's often a huge difference between the government and the applicant. That's why the whole land premium process is dragged on. And for land sale or auction, now if the upset price is not met, then the exercise will fail, and that slows the supply of housing. It also reduces revenue for the government. Now, in 2023-24, the projected land revenue was $85 billion, but in fact, for the first half of the year, there's only revenue of over $8 billion. So it's only about 10% of the projected figure. It's worrying. If we want to develop the infrastructure projects, Northern Metropolis and Ecological artificial islands, and if we want to speed up the supply of private housing, then we must address the long-standing problem of manpower shortage in the construction sector. Now, the labor importation scheme has only approved 20 projects in the first round, and these are all public works projects. But in the private sector, there is also shortage of manpower too. Last week, when the Secretary for Development replied to my oral question, she said that for private construction projects, they could also apply under the labor importation scheme, but there has to be certain, it would be limited to certain skills, job skills or trades. Well, in fact, there is a manpower shortage in the private construction sector as there is in the public construction sector. If there are so many restrictions, then it won't help at all. Why shouldn't there be any restrictions for the importation of labor for private construction projects? Because it's not just about efficiency; it's about lives. If there are not enough workers, and then contractors trying to keep up with the program, you can imagine the concern, the risks involved in terms of construction safety. Now, I once stressed in April when we considered the second reading of a bill that the government shouldn't just focus on increasing the penalty if we want to improve occupational safety and health. Instead, there should be more training. We should enhance the safety awareness of different sectors so that occupational safety will become self-discipline for both employers and employees. Today, I must still stress again, lives are not just numbers. We can't say, well, we need to consider the feelings of family members of workers who are killed in accidents. So we need to prevent accidents at source. Now, I'd like to talk about something less serious. The PA wants to encourage childbearing, so there's a newborn baby bonus of $20,000. I asked my secretary if she would then have a child, and then my secretary said, well, the $20,000 is not the key point. Now, there should be also a first prize of Mark 6, because my secretary say, she needs to win the Mark 6, the first prize, before she can afford to bring up a child. Now, I am a parent too. I'm actually a grandfather now. I know how much it costs and what a heavy burden it is to raise children. So we need the support of employers, family, and we need to have a great, we need to make sure that our children could grow up in a safe and healthy environment, and we need to have confidence that the economy will continue to boom, and so our children will have a bright future. So how do we give confidence to parents so that they will choose to keep their home in Hong Kong for themselves, for the children, so that the good story of Hong Kong could continue? Well, the chief executive, all government officials and members here must all work towards that goal still. I must clarify that by saying that we have to keep working hard is not just about the $20,000 bonuses, it's much more than that. And now, as the chief executive pointed out, this policy address belongs to each and every member of the public. It has set down a blueprint for the future of Hong Kong. I hope all principal officials will persevere and remain committed in delivering the various initiatives in the policy address, so we will have a vibrant economy for a caring community. And our Hong Kong people will then have a good home, and then the stories of Hong Kong and China will continue from generation to generation. Thank you.
Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, President. The policy address attaches top priority to land creation and housing. The long-term housing strategies 2023's progress report was made public after that. It summarized all the progress reports in the past. Now, I have read all the progress reports. I have to say that the long-term housing strategy does not have a soul or even a way forward. We have to analyze the impassive demand and supply situation in the market and the land supply and housing supply in the next 10 years, and then come up with a plan to turn around the uneven distribution. This is what we call demand-driven. The demand and supply of the market would decide the government's efforts in housing supply. Of course, there is an upside to this market-driven mechanism. However, there is an obvious flaw. We never sat down and think about the reasonableness of the market's demand and whether we have to fulfill these demands and whether a change is called for. As a long-term housing strategy, we need to think about the 50 years ahead. We have to think about the change in the demographic. How many people will still live in subdivided units? How many people will be living in PRH units? How many people will be able to afford their own housing? And how many subsidized sales flats we need? We need to think about our vision. When serving the market demand, we have to direct and guide the market as well. It's a shame that these have been left out in the long-term housing strategy. The measures provided therein are just tools to achieve a balance between demand and supply. It lacks a vision and a strategy. Our housing strategy is passive. We are led by the market. In the initial period after the return to China, when the demand was great, we put forward the 85,000 housing target. Now, when the property prices are dropping, we have to stop the 9 measures put forward by Mr. Sun and even stopped updating the long-term housing strategy. And then when the house prices soar again, we were creating land supply and enhancing the supply of housing at all costs. Every time we are one step behind the market trend, it caused a lot of turbulences for society and deepen the rifts in society. I have to be blunt. It is a failure. There are 2 levels to housing strategy. The first level is to respond to and meet the market's demand. The higher level is to guide the market's demand and lead the market's developments to reach where we want to go. The strategies provided for in the long-term housing strategy only remain on the basic level. That is, we are being led by the market. It may be able to solve today's problem, but it will create new problems. In the past few years, because of the long waiting list for PRH, we focused our resources to build public housing and subsidize public housing at all costs. But the long-term housing strategy never thought about the number of public housing we need in Hong Kong. Where will the public housing residents go? Is there a rung above the PRH or public housing? And what about the sandwich class? Where will they go? What is the best ratio of public housing in the housing market? Now, public housing would last for 50 years. What will be the consequences on the market if the ratio is too high? And where is our housing market heading? We have never thought about these problems. That's why there is a very low turnover for public housing. A large group of workforce is being locked up in public housing. As I said, these housing will last 50 years. We have to look further ahead. We have to take the macro perspective of a 50-year duration to change the market-driven, to combine the market-driven logic and a long-term vision so that we can build a smooth housing ladder for our people. Some of the resources on public housing should be reserved to help grassroots and young people to move upward. This will enrich our middle class. Demand can be shaped and driven. Middle class can be created. The key is we have to have a vision and also concrete strategies. We have to give the soul to the long-term housing strategy and lead the markets forward. Thank you. I so submit. Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, President. On the path to normalcy, there are a lot of challenges. Since Mr. John Lee came to office, he has been leading the government to rise above the challenges after the subsidence of the epidemic and improve livelihood. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities. Over the past year, the government has taken on board a lot of valuable experience gained from mainland and overseas duty visits. There are a lot of innovative measures. Bureaus and departments have rode on the opportunities to resolve the deep-rooted issues which have been plaguing us for a long time. There are also new measures to inject vibrancy into society. Different sectors are being united to deal with the challenges. I recognize the government's efforts. I speak in support of the Policy Address 2023 delivered by the Chief Executive in October, as well as the motion of thanks moved by Ms. Starry LEE. In the run-up to the delivery of the Policy Address, the government has reached out to various districts and organized a scores of consultation sessions and listened to the people's view in order to find the root issues of our problems. I thank the Chief Executive and his team for their efforts. The Policy Address is the longest in our history. The government has adopted a pragmatic approach to nurture Hong Kong back to health after the pandemic. It also laid down a bright path forward for the economy. We thank the government for adopting the policy proposals made by the New People's Party for many years, in particular pro-birth measures. We are very pleased to see these measures. There is a series of measures to support families with newborn. For example, the 3-year newborn baby bonus with $20,000 per baby. This is a big red pocket and a token of care for new parents. We hope that we can have a healthy and happy new generation in Hong Kong. The government also enhanced the cap for accommodation-related tax incentives to $120,000 until the child has reached 18 years old. There is also the priority allocation scheme of the housing society and the priority selection scheme for families with newborn. This is how the government is supporting families with newborn to get a flat earlier and get a comfortable home to raise their children. I and the New People's Party welcome these measures. These are very good measures which are well received by the public. This will create a more favorable environment in Hong Kong for families with newborn. This is also a pragmatic and powerful step to address our dwindling population. Besides, the government has also offered support for assistive birth technology. The government has increased the quota of in vitro fertilization services provided by the HA to 1,800, and also there is a tax incentive, a tax deduction for tax deduction of $100,000 per year for birth assistive services. These are very important for prospective parents. It's a shame, though, that the policy address hasn't mentioned about extending the period of storage for frozen eggs. Of course, it would be desirable to give birth when we are still young. From a medical perspective, that would be the most desirable situation. But we have to face the reality sometimes. In terms of our population makeup, we have more female than males in Hong Kong. It is not easy for females to find a right partner to start a family. When you are yet to meet the right one, how can we think about giving birth? This is very common for female to be unmarried, and there is a rising trend of egg freezing in our society. Now, we can't just focus on encouraging people to give birth earlier, but not support them in terms of subsidizing assistive birth technology. So I suggest the government to extend the limit of 10 years for eggs frozen for non-medical reasons, so that women can have more flexibility in their birth decision. Now, in terms of elderly care, the government will continue to focus on aging in place with institutional care as support to enhance support for elderly care at home, as well as staffing at residential care homes. After the subsidence of the epidemic, there has been much more sincere communication between the government and the elderly care sector. The government now understands our difficulties more, and a number of measures have been put forward to improve the service. I noticed that the policy address proposed to adopt more elderly-friendly building design. This is very urgent. In my work in the community, there are indeed a lot of elderly people having mobility issues, and they have a hard time moving around in their buildings. If our buildings lack elderly-friendly facilities, that would be a problem.
I'm pleased to see that the government is following up this issue so that seniors can truly opt for aging in place. Another highlight in the policy address has to do with protecting children. There's a bill, the mandatory reporting of child abuse bill, going through Ecological. I believe the government will get the preparations right after listening to views. We need to protect children from abuse. We should also care about children's mental well-being. In the recent months, we have seen a spate of suicides involving students. Police records show, as at early November, more than 300 student suicides have taken place. More than 30 students died. The rest are attempted suicides. This is a staggering figure, and we really approach this figure with a heavy heart. I hope our officials can continue to pay attention to the well-being of students after COVID. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Tommy Cheung. Thank you, Deputy President. I thank the Chief Executive for taking on board Liberal Party's ideas about industry chains. Some told me in the past, policy addresses rarely discussed industries because things move quickly in industries. I want to discuss the industry chains about the green methanol. Green methanol is an emerging option in fuel. It's a low-carbon option. The IMO's latest carbon emissions requirements say this: starting from 2025, the shipping industry needs to reduce energy consumption, cut down on fossil fuels as a way to cut carbon emissions. By 2050, they need to slash carbon emissions by 80%. Alternative fuels are mostly liquefied natural gas and green methanol. They are great options for seagoing vessels. Green methanol actually works better than LNG in cutting down carbon emissions. That's why there's fast growth in orders for green methanol. The first batch of green methanol vessels have taken to the seas already. Starting from mid-2025, there will be a takeoff in the growth. The shipping industry thinks there will be millions in growth in green methanol every year. It will involve billions of US dollars. Green methanol needs bunkering and logistics just like traditional fossil fuels. Building new facilities or retrofitting old ones will need time and investment. Ports need to get ready. Hong Kong needs to catch up too. Hong Kong used to be the busiest port in the Far East. But in bunkering and other areas, Hong Kong has fallen behind Singapore and South Korea. Due to costs and other reasons, vessels would go for bunkering and other services here. Green methanol does not come from oil. The switch to green methanol in the shipping industry may lead to a reshuffling of bunkering and refueling. Singapore has tried something new. They tried green methanol bunkering. In South Korea, for new green methanol vessels, they are also going ahead with the refueling with green methanol. So these other ports are already starting. For us here, creating a green methanol industry here to go hand in hand with the GBA cities where we have other ports, that's how we can stay competitive. And we can have more ships to come here for refueling and load or unload goods and lead the development of other sectors. The green methanol industry chain involves storage, supply, transmission. And with an internationally accredited carbon management system, we can make it work. We are aligned with global practice with accreditation. We have great businesses here. We need to make sure our products meet international standards. That's where we have a huge advantage. A green methanol industry chain covers many professions and sectors. We need to start early to meet the surge in demand a year from now. Before the market matures, the government needs to take the lead to take things forward, especially in infrastructure, such as port, oil tanks. We need to use public funds and also public-private partnerships to get industry players to take part. We have tunnels, aircraft fuel tanks, PPPs were involved to ensure the operation would be safe and smooth. I thank the government for adopting our ideas. I also thank Mr. Frankie Yik, also from our party. There's an interdepartmental working group on industry development. The working group has had the first meeting. The TD, the TLB, the EPD, the EMSD, the FSD were involved. Bureaus, departments are involved. It's hard to bring everyone together, but we did it. There were also committed people from the sector, shipping industries, for example, green methanol businesses, stakeholders indicated clearly they were willing to take part in making Hong Kong a regional hub for green methanol bunkering. And they would like to see government to get involved so that we can become a green shipping hub and make it a reality. I hope the government can make this a reality and develop the green methanol industry chain policy. International shipping aside, this can also help us achieve carbon neutrality. For ships in Hong Kong and GBA waters, let's make good use of the new energy transport fund, get the trade to switch to green methanol. We can go from gray to blue to green methanol. We can take things one step at a time. The government vessels are sizable, so the government should take the lead. Carbon neutrality requires not just the shipping industry. Let's also look at the land transport, buses, lorries. To switch from petrol to hydrogen will also require early investment to create an industry chain. Diverse sources of hydrogen will be a must. We can do different kinds of hydrogen and also methanol. That's how we can ensure a steady supply of hydrogen. Green hydrogen will help us achieve zero emission. So a green methanol industry chain can help us decarbonize sea and land transport. Deputy President, I now turn to relaxing the cap on non-local students for them to take up part-time work at local universities. I've been calling for both undergrad and postgrad students to be able to enjoy this relaxation. During the PA consultations, the Liberal Party proposed the idea. At the HKUST, I also suggested allowing undergraduate students to take up part-time work. Professor Nancy Yip supported the idea. Another electrical member from a trade union also described my idea as a good idea. The PA only proposed a relaxation for postgraduate students. The Liberal Party and I will continue to push for the lifting of relaxation also for undergraduates. This is not just to solve the manpower crunch. I did studies in the US. Part-time work helped us meet living expenses. That also helped me build up a network and helped me learn about the place I worked. So this will help build a sense of belonging for these students. And this can apply to Hong Kong. So it makes sense to relax the restriction I so submit. Mr. Chen Siu-Hong. Thank you, Deputy President. I will discuss occupational safety and health, green measures, and green transport. Prevention is better than the cure. This applies to diseases and also to OSH. No one wants to see fatal accidents, but in the past 6 months, there were a spate of fatal accidents on construction sites, leaving many injured or dead. That's heartbreaking. The amended OSH laws took effect in April this year. The maximum penalties went up to $10 million. But the Labor Department should not be complacent with the stiffened penalties. We still have to get to the root of the problem. In last year's policy address, there was a paragraph about creating a stronger deterrent effect with stiffer penalties. But in this year's PA, nothing on creating an OSH culture. I'm let down. The government fails to see the urgency of creating an OSH culture. Some people wanted speed over safety, or they were complacent. They dismissed the safety precautions. So more frequent inspections will help. We should also raise OSH awareness, create a safety culture and roll out safe and smart site systems. But let's learn from Singapore and the UK. We need design for safety. Let's reduce high-risk operations that will help reduce industrial accidents. Now, land and housing. I welcome the continued efforts to create land with speed and more public housing, and also the attempts to streamline statutory and administrative processes. There will be a task force on tackling subdivided housing units. This shows the government's resolve to help the grassroots. This should be acknowledged. Now, green measures. Not much of the PA is devoted to this area. There is a climate change and carbon neutrality office. This will help Hong Kong reach our carbon targets. The PA proposes measures about reducing energy consumption, lowering carbon emission for buildings, having more products under the producer responsibility schemes, the Sampo Shu Wetland Conservation Park, and also measures on biodiversity. The government will continue to implement the measures under the Climate Action Plan, but that does not go the full length in addressing carbon emissions. We need detailed plans and targets. For 2025, 2030, and 2035, every 5 years, let's review our progress in carbon emissions so that everything goes to plan. If things deviate from the plan, we can fix it right away. Now, transport and infrastructure. One highlight in the PA is the 3 rail links and the 3 major roads. We will have 2 major rail links and 1 major road. This will link up different development nodes and help integrate Hong Kong and Shenzhen. This will further enhance the transport links within the GBA. The 5 rail links, the 4 major roads will bring huge economic benefit. And then we will have the Northern Metropolis, the artificial islands. They will start one after another. This involves huge investment, and people are worried, how do we pay for it? The Financial Secretary spoke earlier today. I hope the Office for Financing of Major Development Projects can tap into market forces, leverage market funding and market efficiency, and do feasibility studies on these mega projects. Now, new energy transport. I have been calling for efforts to promote green transport. I welcome the dedicated chapter on new energy transport. There is something on sea, land, and air transport in green transformation. This responds to a call that I made in a member's motion earlier this year. I called for better laws and regulation, hydrogen fuel cell buses, for example, faster move in carbon reduction, so that by 2035 we can have zero emission from our vehicles. I welcome the hydrogen development strategy in Hong Kong, so that we will have rules on the use of hydrogen. There will be preparations on legislative amendments. I hope the government can approach this from the perspective of industry development in forming a long-term strategy. I hope next year the government can launch new plans and blueprint for local vessels and ocean-going vessels. We need green methanol bunkering. And we also want an action plan for sustainable aviation fuel. For buses and taxis, we would like to see a transformation roadmap and timetable. I would like to see resolve from the government in trying out new energy transport, electric minibuses, heavy goods vehicles, coaches, and hydrogen double-deckers, hydrogen-fueled street cleaning car vehicles and trains. But there is little on some of these areas. We will see a blueprint on major transport. I hope in that blueprint we will see more on smart mobility. Technology has given rise to new modes of transport. I propose to the government that we need a forward-thinking transport blueprint. We need smart transport. I'm pleased to see that in Kowloon East, Kai Tak, and Hong Shou Kyu Ha Chun, there will be new green mass transport systems. There will be green, highly efficient transport to improve the local transport links. I hope the government can act on its word. Don't go back on your word and let people down.
Your time is up. Please stop. Mr. Tony Jie. Thank you, President. For many grassroots families, or even the middle class, housing remains the biggest concern for them. The government is going to enhance speed, efficiency, quantity and quality in housing production. And with the hard work of the Development Bureau and Housing Bureau, we have seen a substantial reduction in the waiting time for public rental housing. And the government's now identified land for housing units that are 10,000 more than originally planned in the long-term housing strategy, and that's good. But then we are not just talking about public rental housing. There are those who want to buy their home, so we need to help the first-time home buyers. And then for young people, we want to promote upward mobility. So people want to be housed, they want to buy their first homes, and then there has to be upward mobility, so we need to focus on all three. Now, there are some reports that show that some young people want to keep their eligibility for public rental housing, so they don't want promotion, they don't want pay rise, they even quit their job so they could wait for PRH allocation. So is it the case that the current PRH policy will prevent people from striving for upward mobility, especially for young people? Now, many people want to get PRH. Does it mean that there is a widening wealth gap? Many young people cannot afford to buy their homes, and that's why they have to rely on taxpayers' money to provide them with PRH. Now, the current ratio of public rental housing to subsidized housing is 70 to 30, but is there room to review that? We need to make effective use of available resources. We want to help people live happily. For targeted poverty alleviation, we need to be careful because in controlling expenditure because of the fiscal deficit. We want to avoid wastage. We want to avoid duplication of assistance. More importantly, we don't want Hong Kong to become like a welfare state in some Western countries. Well, welfare is so good, and so people don't bother going to work. And so that will promote the so-called lying flat culture among young people, and that will stand in the way of impetus for development. Now, the government proposes to phase out substandard subdivided units, so that it means the government is not just focusing on quantity, they want to improve the quality of housing. Over a decade ago, when I first ran for election for Ecological, I proposed that there should be a per capita, there should be a minimum size per person for housing, but the government couldn't even provide enough housing, so of course it's not doing that. Now, several years later, the government projects that we will have more than enough land to meet the demands, and there's room for improvement. So we need to set a timetable for setting a minimum housing standard for each person, and so people will enjoy better living condition. Now, apart from housing quality, we need to have good town planning and a good transport network, and then Hong Kong will be truly a livable city. The government's been stressing infrastructure-led planning principle, but very often the construction of roads and transport infrastructure lag far behind housing projects. Now, for other facilities such as supermarkets, wet markets, recreational facilities, and so on, well, these facilities are only built many years after occupation intake. Chuan and Tin Shui Wei were examples, and recently we have Tung Chung, Anderson Road, and Queens Hill developments. People had moved in without any support facilities, and they have to wait a long time for buses. I hope we won't see that again with the Northern Metropolis. Some time ago we had extreme weather, and that shows that and also there were concrete steps falling off buildings. That shows that there's urban decay. So the government needs to move faster in urban renewal. There is need to enhance the mandatory building inspection program and repair processes. There's a need to also streamline the various processes. Now, these are proposals, suggestions from me and the sector for a long time. I hope they will be implemented soon. And many years ago, together with experts from different sectors, I have promoted aging in place design for buildings, and also for family to live with their elderly family members. The Housing Authority has taken on board our suggestions, but then in the private sector, it's not the case. But finally, the Deputy Financial Secretary is going to coordinate building design that is suitable for the elderly. Well, it's long overdue, but finally it's here, so it's good. The government's also launched various energy saving measures and waste reduction measures. For example, plastic shopping bag charging scheme, a regulation of the use of plasticware, and then next April we're going to have the municipal solid waste charging scheme commencing. I support all these measures, and I think we could do even more. But then at the same time, I can appreciate that if there are so many measures introduced all at the same time, it will be too confusing for the public. They may not be able to adapt. So we need to do proper education. There has to be proper support measures. And I've stressed many times that the government needs to make use of property management companies because they have the closest contact with residents. So apart from waste reduction, and we need to also do more to ensure building safety, and we need to prevent domestic violence, child abuse cases, and so on. Well, actually, property management companies could help in all these areas. They could help to address all these issues. But then the property management sector has been overlooked all this time. I hope this government will pay more attention to the property management sector and give them more support. So I speak in support of the motion. Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you, President. The theme of the PA is a vibrant economy for a caring community. But we need to have stability, social stability, before we could consider that. That's why I welcome the proposal of the PA that is the government is going to legislate for Article 23 of the Basic Law, so it will complete the legislative exercise in 2024. Next month, on the 10th, there will be the District Council election. I hope the reshaped, reformed District Council will help the public to address their needs. For now, I'd like to talk about policies in relation to the re-employment training board. Now, the sector I belong to is one of the training organizations, so I need to declare interest. Now, there are also various measures that are pro-childbearing, and that's a pleasant surprise to me. Now, the government has said before that whether to have children is really a personal choice. The government must not intervene too much. But then this time there are pro-childbearing measures such as the newborn baby bonus that helps to lessen the burden to a small extent. But then such bonus is nothing new in many countries. And then there are other obstacles that stand in the way. So that's why there is proper leave for parents. For example, in Guangdong province, for family with children under the age of 3, parents have 10 days of parental leave each year. Parenting leave each year. So the government could learn from the experience. There should be statutory parenting leave. As for paternal leave, it should be no less than 7 days. The government is the largest employer in Hong Kong. It should take the lead in promoting a pro-childbearing workplace. I understand many members, including Dr. Frankie Ann, has asked for civil servants to be provided with parenting leave and flexible work arrangement, but then there's no positive response from the Bureau. The government spends much in producing videos to encourage employers to adopt family-friendly measures, but then the government won't do more itself. It's not providing parenting leave or extending paternity leave or providing flexible work arrangement. I hope the government should take the lead and set a good example for the other employers. I see that in the policy address for the school-based after-school care program, which is now a pilot program, it's become a measure for targeted poverty alleviation. So only grassroots families and single parent families will benefit. I'm worried that will be labeling for such children. And then only 50 primary schools are taking part in the pilot scheme, so we don't have schools in each and every district. I hope the government will consider relaxing the application criteria for the schemes, and the scheme should be extended to all 18 districts in Hong Kong. Apart from grassroots families, there are many double income families. They need to leave their children at school too. So they need this after-school care program. And then this program will also allow some parents to rejoin the workforce, and that will help to address the manpower shortage.
On manpower policy, the Supplementary Labour Importation Scheme have its scopes extended to 26 job types. There are some 100 applications received. Mr. Peter Shield that the Labour Advisory Board should be taking the lead to approve the cases. I have to clarify that we only have one chairman, that is the Secretary for Labour and Welfare. The other members are just advisors. So in terms of approving application made by employers with hiring difficulties, we also have to pay attention to protection of local employment. Now, I'm pleased to see the launching of the Re-employment Allowance Pilot Scheme. In the past, the allowance scheme were in favor of employers. They were not incentives to encourage elderly or middle-aged persons to be re-employed. Now, I hope the government can offer more flexibility under the pilot scheme. There are women engaging in works like household assistance or maternity assistance. The duration of work and the timetable are entirely dependent on the needs of the employers. So most household assistants would get employment from more than one employer, and the total duration of employment are usually longer than 6 months. I think the government should remove the requirements that the applicants must work for more than 6 months under one employer. As long as they have worked for more than 6 months or 12 months, they should be eligible for the allowance. And also the working hours requirements should be based on an aggregate working hours in the month. This will provide more flexibility. In terms of training for local workers, under a pilot basis, the policy address are proposed to allow enterprise-based pre-employment training under the Employees Retraining Board. After the training, the employers should offer the trainees with at least a 1-year contract and a salary above prevailing market wage. This is very much attractive. I believe that we have to require those employers who have applied for importation of labor to enroll themselves under the scheme. This may address their hiring difficulties, and this is also beneficial to them. Now, about protection for platform workers. In January this year, the Labor and Welfare Bureau said that it would draw reference to other jurisdictions in protection for platform workers and conduct a local survey to formulate the relevant measures and strategies. I'm disappointed to see no progress made in the policy address. Most platform workers are categorized as self-employed. They can't enjoy the protection offered by the law. For platform workers who are in the food delivery business, they wouldn't be insured even if they have a traffic accident. Their income as well as the jobs they get offered are not as flexible as that of the real self-employed, because they would be restricted by the platform. Now we have to offer them compensation for accidents and injuries at work, like that's provided under the Employment Ordinance. And also we have to define platform workers and their rights. The Labour Tribunal has established an authority this year that there is an equal partnership relationship between the workers and the platform. And also a rule that in the Mirror incident, the employer failed to take out insurance policy for the employees. These may be cases of fake self-employment. Now, without a clear definition on the rights for platform workers, these problems will persist. There should be a timetable on that. I so submit. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Deputy President. This is the first policy address after we have emerged from the pandemic. The geopolitical situation in the world is shifting very quickly. Global economy is weak, consumption sentiment is low, and the prospect is dim. This policy address themed itself upon a vibrant economy for a caring community. It is a timely theme. With the change in the economy and the cyclical changes, everyone is feeling uncertain. Well, I haven't seen any jurisdictions which would base their strategy upon a great contraction in the economy and the population structure. We have to think ahead and not be complacent, but we can't take a step backward in terms of our overall strategy. If we fail to catch up, we will only be left out in the country's great march towards prosperity. We have to make our brand shine again. Now, from the town planning point of view, I hope the government can do the following 6 things. First, the government has to continue to enhance capacity and quantity. Second, formulate specific measures to help enterprises and industries to establish a footing. 3, consolidate cultural industries with economic contribution. 4, enhancing the housing ladder. 5, introduce private investments through bond issuance. 6, be bold and smart in dealing with subdivided units. Now, in the at the time when we are facing the changes in a century, we can't retreat. We have to enhance our capacity and attract talents. I'm pleased to see that the government will press ahead with the major development projects, including the Northern Metropolis and the KYC Artificial Island. The Northern Metropolis is the new growth engine for Hong Kong. It will adopt an infrastructure-led and industry-oriented approach. Concerning the macro-spatial planning, transportation alignments, as well as the positionings of the zones, the action agenda of Northern Metropolis development has some good ideas. I applaud that. But it doesn't mean that we will have the relevant industries setting up in the area. Now, for example, for poultry farms or multi-story buildings, how will we relocate these traditional industries? Now, without the support of specific industry strategies, we will not have a way forward, and that's not what the action agenda has offered us. In terms of supporting enterprises to come, we still haven't locked on prospective newcomers. At the same time, existing operators are leaving the game. If that's the case, then the Northern Metropolis will not realize. It will just be a big swath of brownfield sites. Now we have the strategic study on the integration of development and conservation with the Sham Po Shu Conservation Park and so on. Whether it is a conservation park or a wetland park, we have to do more than just zoning the area. By disallowing developments, it doesn't mean that we are doing conservation. We can't just rely on laws and regulations. We have to be active in giving out incentives. For example, the agricultural land use, conservation and education and recreational uses, these are not inherently contradictory. It's just about management. And also we have to ensure that we have modern agriculture and fisheries to lead agriculture and fisheries related tourism. And also we have to ensure that there are complementarities and synergized developments between the four zones to ensure the sustained development of the Northern Metropolis so that we can enjoy the economic benefits from blue and green developments. We want to make Hong Kong a model in this. Now, if the Northern Metropolis is the entry point to the north, then the KYC Artificial Island will become a hub connecting the urban areas, Zhujiang, as well as other cities in the area. In terms of the financial arrangements for urban renewal as well as land resumption, KYC Artificial Island may be the solution. It is very malleable and we have to push ahead with the development. Besides the unique strategic value, the 1,000 hectare large artificial island can share the development's burden together with the Northern Metropolis. The government says sufficient land has been identified to meet the development's need for the next 10 years. There will be some 7,000 hectares of land created until 2045, and also build a land reserve of 1,000 hectares. So these are encouraging figures. Well, if we just have the Northern Metropolis, then where will the land reserve come from, and how can we give people homes? The government has done a lot in streamlining the development procedures. I give you 100 likes. In terms of public housing creation, in the first 5 years, together with transitional housing, there will be 27,000 public housing units provided. Compared with the last term of the government, there are 67,000 more units. These are all very encouraging, but we want to see results. The increase in the supply of public housing doesn't mean that everyone will be happy. The reason is simple. Some people are unable to benefit from the increased supply, and some of the public are pessimistic about the future. Now, the governments, some people said that they didn't want to see young people queuing up for PRH housing. They should strive for a better future and not waste their life. I applaud that statement. People are facing different extents of difficulties. For grassroots households and middle class, they don't want to become landlords, but they can't afford private housing and they are not eligible for subsidized flats. So they have to start from scratch. They have to climb the housing ladder from the lowest rung, and not to mention starting a family. And I think we have to conduct timely review on the long-term housing strategy. Riding on the opportunity of the extension of the mortgage loan coverage period, we have to shorten the waiting time. We have to enhance the public-private housing split as well as public-private land ratio to ensure that people can move upward and have a sense of belonging to Hong Kong. Now, where does the money come from? To finance the major infrastructure projects financing cost, the PA proposed the Committee for the Financing of Major Development Projects and the Office for the Financing of Major Development Projects, led by the FS. They will advise the government on how to achieve financial sustainability for major projects. Countries hard hit by the epidemic have been fighting for capitals. Many countries replenished their fiscal budgets through bond issuance. Last year, the global bond issuance size was $326 million US, $1 trillion US. Now, in Hong Kong, we still have a huge debt. According to the IMF's 2022 sovereign debt ratio in GDP, U.S. debt accounts for 123.3% of its GDP. For Japan, it is 225.25%. Singapore, 167.7%. Hong Kong, we are just at 6.1%. In June, the Singaporean government's debt has risen to 171.7% of its GDP. It is a record high. Now, this is a kind of anti-cyclical measures. The government has to do that to meet its financing need. Hong Kong cannot be excluded. We can't be restrained by the old mindset.
The government should also look at the possibility of private participation in project. We have the traditional approach, public-private partnerships. And then there are also special schemes. For owners of land resumed, we can consider letting them buy the bonds and share in the future dividends. That will be a way to rally wider support. That's why I have been calling for debt for land and equity for debt. Brown bonds or land bonds will be attractive based on the experience from silver bonds and green bonds. I welcome the government's new thinking in coming up with new ways of land resumption. The PA also proposes a task force on tackling subdivided units. In 10 months' time, there will be a study. There will be minimum standards for SDUs and ways to stamp out SDUs. That's no easy task. There are high public expectations, such as on the definition of poor quality SDUs and the priorities of stamping out these units. Before defining poor quality SDUs, the government must think about the priorities first. The pressing task is to address those substandard housing with structural safety issues. We will also deal with issues for people who will be displaced. Will that create unfairness? The SDU issue requires that we handle it with a sense of urgency, but we cannot rush. SDUs are closely linked to urban management. The PA proposes stronger management of building safety. Measures are proposed for building management. First, targeting buildings that will require inspection, identifying higher risk buildings, and reviewing the procedure of Operation Building Bright 2.0. The PA proposes an amendment bill to the Buildings Ordinance within this year. There will also be amendments to this ordinance next year. I support this approach. During this review, the government must be realistic. It must look at the two ordinances on whether they can help address the the illegal structures in three new buildings and SDUs. For old buildings, there needs to be something needs to be done on fixing them. We need administrative and legal measures to address the continuing urban decay of old districts. The Urban Renewal Authority should also play a bigger role to offer a wider array of options for the residents there. Post-COVID, it will take time for the economy to take up. We need both fund money and talent. A shortage of land cannot bring about a good environment. People won't come, and the 8 centers will become no more than a pipe dream. The PA proposes expanding our global business network. We will continue to explore the European and US market, but we will also look at the Middle East, the Southeast Asia market, and also Belt and Road countries. Saudi Arabia mentioned that they're looking to set up an office here so that we will have more exchanges of expertise, talent, and funding. We need to stay informed of these markets. Hardware and software matter. We should also look at education and culture. We need to go global and bring outside investors in, so that our friends along the Belt and Road can find opportunities here, and they can achieve something in Hong Kong, so that Hong Kong becomes their second home, and let them share in Hong Kong's success. And that's how we can deliver what's expected of us under one country, two systems. This will require belief and length. I so submit. I support the motion of thanks. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Deputy President. I'm speaking for the second time. I talked to the financial officials just then. I said we need more than just a few pillar industries. Otherwise, we get social tension. We're seeing better and better policy addresses. We have put behind the political squabbling. We now focus on measures. I thank the officials here. I talked to them about issues about the agricultural and fishery sectors. Ms. Bernadette Lin, for example, I talked to her over various issues. There were issues about livestock licenses. We talked. Mr. Andrew Lam brought up the artificial islands. There's a role for the agricultural and fisheries sector, and the Development Bureau is willing to look into the issue. The Environment and Ecology Bureau will come up with a development blueprint. We had 9 consultation sessions. Government officials were involved. By the end of this year, there will be something concrete on this blueprint for agriculture and fisheries. I know some of the details. I'm aggressive, I believe. There is an issue about the structure. For the agriculture and fisheries sector, we don't have any industry groups that are agile and play an active role. So something needs to be addressed in the blueprint. In the PA, we will double down on the operation of the fisheries sector. But there's a problem, and that has to do with marketing. We have land issues that are holding back farmers. But if there's a spike in supply, but little increase in the prices, so farmers are no longer finding it profitable. That's why we have farmers policy, because we have to look after farmers' livelihoods. You need to ensure their income, and that's why they will stay as farmers. I also thank Mr. Chris Sun. The supplementary labor scheme. There are issues. It takes months before imported workers come in. They have to get their ID cards. They have to open bank accounts. Without a bank account, these workers get into issues. Mr. Chris Sun helped sort out issues. These issues are long-standing, like the issues with Hong Kong ID cards, account opening, etc. But now, the current term government can focus on these issues with the improved electoral system. Our officials are committed officials. Issues remain outstanding, but I look forward to working with officials on sorting out the issues. Now, coming back to the agriculture and fisheries sector. The Deputy Chief Secretary is here. He used to be a Secretary for Development. We need to do more for agriculture and fisheries, including in the Northern Metropolis. There will be 4 zones in the Northern Metropolis. Lau Fao Shan is one area. There's an oyster industry in Lau Fao Shan. Let's fuse it with the tourism sector. Then we can have a specialty tourism product. Some people looking for roast geese, they go all the way to Zhongshan. Because of the roast geese business, that also activated other kinds of businesses. The chief executive led us on a delegation to Zhongshan, Foshan. We visited the fusion of old districts and new industries. We did not do enough in this engagement. Let's find out the approach taken by those governments and how they achieved success. We cannot make sure every single fisherman stays in the business. These people may switch to a different industry, but they need a livelihood. So let's look at the 10-year Changjiang scheme. There was a ban, a 10-year moratorium on fishing along Changjiang. So along came a green industry. Former fishermen turned into people spotting, catching poachers. I know the Secretary for Environment and Ecology also knows we have our limits here. As Mr. Andrew Lam was saying, we used to take a fragmented view of things. There are different silos, environment, conservation, etc. So for our future, we have to think about there are people living there. How do we ensure they share in the new development? We don't want to leave anyone behind. We don't want these people's quality of life decline for others to do better. It's like the trolley problem. Getting 1 killed is better than getting 5 killed. But our goal is to make sure no one lies in the way of the trolley. That's how we can have a harmonious community. Now, conservation and fisheries. Some green groups want us to do absolutely nothing. I talk to them. To protect the environment, to return the landscape to the past, how far should we go? These green groups struggle to give us an answer. The central authorities gave us an answer, and that is the peaceful coexistence between humanity and nature. There's an equilibrium. Let's find that equilibrium. So for the Sampo Shu Wetland Conservation Park, migratory birds visit the park. We already have Maipo wetland. People live there. Birds can go to the area. Let's have an area where fishermen and migratory birds can coexist side by side. Deputy Chief Secretary, we need to think about this. Let's make sure everyone can share in our future economy. I have 3 minutes left. Now, I'm a spokesperson on food and environmental hygiene of the DAB. I want to talk about the municipal solid waste charging and also bed bugs issues. I cannot get to all of those issues. I want to focus on just one point, municipal solid waste charging. It's not just about trash piling up. At the Bills Committee, we saw this 6-month transition period. We asked whether there would be extension. The government said it would consider extending the transition period. I rarely heard such a definitive answer. The government needs to reassure us. Even the government sensed there would be troubles ahead. The public told us. Charging for plastic bags and also this MSW charging. There are people with limited means. But for the affluent, do they have the incentive to reduce waste? So those with limited means have to scrimp and save. Reducing waste is an issue that everyone should get involved in. Can we have a reward for people reducing waste? Since the government has a direction for implementing the MSW charging, we cannot make major changes. Let's let it run for a while to see how it goes. For those who put in the work, we should treat them fairly. I so submit.
Mr. Dominic Lee. Thank you, President. First of all, I would like to thank the Chief Executive for his policy address. It covers rather an exhaustive range of issues, but then some in the community say maybe it's too long. Maybe in future you could consider a summary and a full version so the public will get to learn the salient points of the PA. Now, Ms. Winnie Ho seems to want to go to the bathroom, but anyway, I'm going to talk about housing. Well, she's back in her seat at once. Sorry for holding you up. But anyway, the housing issue is so important in Hong Kong. I don't think I need to dwell on that point. And particularly when we talk about subdivided units, it's a serious problem. Government statistics show that in 2016 there were 90,000 SDUs. By 2021, over 100,000. And so in 5 years, we've seen an increase of 10% of SDU units. And for those living in the SDUs, there are at least 6,000 people more living in SDUs in a few years. So it is not at all looking up. SDUs mean hidden risks and danger. And also SDUs are small in sizes. The living condition is really crowded. And if we go by per footage rental, probably the rent is much higher than even luxury flats per square foot. And then tenants often have to pay excessive or overcharged, or they are often overcharged rather in utility bills. So it adds to the burden of the tenants. Now, Mr. Vincent Zhang and I were both district councillors of the Sham Shui Po. We visited some SDUs together. There's a family of 4. It really left a strong impression on me. The younger brother, the older sister, and the parents, they live in 100 square foot SDUs, and they have to share the kitchen and the bathroom with other households. The mother told us, well, they had to wait to use the facilities, and there's also the question of hygiene. So often there are quarrels with other tenants as a result. So when they live in such a small unit, and the number of units, the neighbors may not always get along well. Now in the US, Europe, and South Korea, there's the bed-bug infestation. But then for many SDU tenants in Hong Kong, they've always been plagued by bug infestation. The mother of the SDU household told me, they lived in they've only lived in this STU for less than half a year, and they were either bed bugs or other ticks or whatever, and they tried spraying insecticide, didn't work, and they thought of employing a pest control company, but they couldn't afford it. And then even if they brought in a pest control company, the bugs will still come back from other units, so that's a serious problem for them. And of course, the biggest issue with SDU is the lack of space. The 10-year-old brother has to sleep in the same bed with his sister. The sister is 12 years old. She's entering puberty, and then she has to share a bed with her brother. It's actually not convenient. And we asked the children what their wish was, and they said they wanted to be allocated PRH as soon as possible, so they will have their own rooms. They don't need to share a bed, and then they bump into each other often in that bed, and they all want to have their own private space. I'm sure that's the wish of all SDU occupants. In fact, officials of central authorities also very concerned about SDUs. President Xi Jinping visited Hong Kong last year. He delivered an important address. He said he'd like the new government to address livelihood issues. He hoped there would be a bit more living space for people, and because that's what people aspire for. And then Director Xia Baolong said before, now, in 2049, China would achieve the second centenary goals, and hopefully by then Hong Kong could bid farewell to cage housing and SDUs. Now, we have SDUs because there is a long-standing shortage of land and housing supply. If we want to eradicate we need to eradicate substandard SDUs for there to be decent housing for all. So the government needs to increase public housing supply. I'm particularly grateful to Mr. John Lee, the Chief Executive, in leading the new team of government officials, including Ms. Winnie Ho. They worked hard. They have adopted a multi-pronged approach. And in the past year, we could see significant improvement in the supply of public housing. For example, in the next 10 years, we have a demand for 308,000 units. But then the Chief Executive mentioned in the PA that with the hard work of government officials, enough land has been identified to build 410,000 public housing units. That means the target is exceeded by some 10,000 units, and that could substantially reduce the waiting time. In the first 5-year period, together with public housing, and there will be a total supply of 172,000 public housing units. So that means an additional 67,000 households will be able to benefit with the additional units produced. In the first PA, Mr. John Lee put forward measures to enhance the quantity, speed, efficiency, and quality of housing. Now, apart from the Housing Bureau, the Development Bureau has also been working hard. Progress has been made. And so they're able to cap the waiting time. It was 6 years at the peak, and now it's dropped to 5.3 years. And then by 2026-27, hopefully the waiting time will drop to 4.5 years. So the government's working towards that target. And so that's a reversal of the trend of the waiting time lengthening. For SDU tenants, of course, this is very good news indeed. 4.5 years of wait is still a long time. It really affects the development of children in particular. So the government needs to consider various ways to increase public housing supply. The government needs to deregulate, and for vacant school premises or other government properties, they could be used to they could be turned into transitional housing or light public housing, whatever. So as SDU tenants wait for PRH, they could still live in such adequate housing, such as transitional housing. And then for the fringe of country parks where there is a low conservation value, perhaps the sites could be used for developing public housing as well. Of course, public housing resources are scarce, but many complain to us that there's still abuse of PRH units. So some units are sublet or let to someone else, or they're just left vacant. Some units are used for storage only, and there are others who try to hide their assets overseas or on the mainland, and they manage to get PRH. So the government needs to do more in terms of inspection and auditing, so that you could stamp out the abuse of PRH units, and that will help to shorten the waiting time too. In the PA, we learned that the first batch of 2,100 LPH units will be completed in 2024 to 25, and then by 2027 to 28, a total of 30,000 light public housing units will be ready to meet the serious shortage of public housing in the next 5 years. But then in terms of the location of the LPH projects, there's for many of the sites already identified, there is not yet support, enough infrastructure support. So the government needs to make sure there is proper support before residents move in. In the PA, the government's also taken on board our demand. There will be a task force tackling the issue of subdivided units. Is to be led by the Deputy Financial Secretary, and the Vice Chairman is Ms. Winnie Ho. And then they will take 10 months to look into the SDU issues in depth, and then they may set minimum standards, say in terms of building safety, hygiene standards, living space, and so on. So for the substandard SDUs, then there may be proposals to eradicate them. And also they want to prevent the resurgence of substandard SDUs, and there will be solutions that will address the issue in an orderly manner, such as legal and administrative measures. Now, it won't just take a year or two to address the SDU issue. But we have to start somewhere, and I hope the task force will press on with this work. It should plan its work carefully. It must listen to the views of the community, in particular those of SDU tenants, and then you will eventually eradicate the substandard SDUs and ensure public safety. Now, under the leadership of different secretaries of departments and directors of bureau, we are seeing gradual improvement to the land and housing supply issue. And then there are various projects being taken forward, such as the artificial islands and Northern Metropolis. It's hoped that more land will be made available for public house, for the construction of public housing. So those on the waiting list will get housing soon. Now, as long as we work together, we're optimistic that the housing issue will be addressed, but everyone needs to work hard, so everyone in Hong Kong will have a nicer living environment and will enjoy more space. Thank you. Ms. Rebecca Chen. Thank you.